As the founder of the Christian Emergency Network, I know you'll be blessed to hear from two unsung heroes joining us today to share how the love of the Lord moved in a powerful way through their response to Hurricane Ian. They'll tell us about their experience working side by side to respond to the vast devastation. We will hear from CEN disaster response expert Sherry Baresh, who has trained and mobilized disaster volunteers globally, and Pastor Steve Rhodes, senior pastor of the Church of the Nazarene in Fort Myers, Florida, whose congregation and community experienced the brunt of the crisis. 90% of those in crisis will ask, where is God in this? So how should Christians respond to disasters like Hurricane Ian, whether directly affected or from afar? So Sherry, I'd like to kind of start with you, and I want to thank you for joining us today. I'm wondering, could you just
Thank you.
provide a brief summary of this hurricane incident for us, like just a really brief summary of it?
Certainly, Hurricane Ian hit a lot of Florida. I think there were like 20 counties that were federally declared, and then a lot of counties that had a lot of damage that were not declared. We ended up in Lee County, where Pastor Steve's church is, and the devastation is just overwhelming there. And what we're seeing, and we're since the 1st of October, then we are 5 months out, I guess, and we are still seeing just need after need coming in, phone call after phone call. So many people are still sleeping in tents and in cars or in molded homes that still have not had any assistance of getting their moldy debris out or their walls out or doing any gutting in the home, no mold sanitation.
Mm.
People don't know yet what they're going to do, and that's what we're trying to help.
And I would just add to that. I think in Fort Myers, this was a totally unexpected, very vast hit to them. In other words, they really weren't prepared in a lot of ways for the devastation that occurred. And so and usually in Florida, there's a lot more preparatory time. But in this case, Fort Myers was really kind of broadsided, wasn't it?
Yes, and ended up being the hardest hit
Mm.
county.
Yes. And so, Pastor Rhodes, this is your community that we're talking about here, and I just want to thank you for joining us today. Can you just provide kind of a brief summary from your vantage point of what happened there in Fort Myers and basically the devastation your community is still facing and recovering from?
Yes, what happened was utter devastation. We in a matter of just a few hours, we went from being paradise on earth with palm trees and sunshine and beautiful beaches and everything that makes Southwest Florida a place that the rest of, well, certainly where most of America wants to come to live, as is still the case with about 1,000 people per day moving to Florida. But it went from paradise to utter devastation in just a matter of hours when Hurricane Ian took a right turn and decided to come up the Caloosahatchee River and bring with it 16-foot storm surges that just really destroyed the beach area of Fort Myers. And then I think it was 1 mile under being a Cat 5 hurricane in terms of winds, and which the wind also just destroyed a lot of homes, left a lot of people homeless, as Sherry has already said. And we got up the next morning to an area that didn't look so much like paradise. Yet at the same time, we realized that this was a moment that God had brought us to for such a time as this, and looking forward to sharing more about that as we make our way through this time today.
Well, Pastor Rhodes, I'm just wondering, how did you find Sherry to begin with and to begin starting to work with her to be able to respond to this crisis?
Well, it was day 3 of following the disaster when I received a text message from our missions director here at our church that said, you need to reach out to Mary Marr. And so I did. I was driving down the road on very little sleep, and made that phone call to a complete stranger, not
Mm.
really knowing why, other than a lady that I respected said that I needed to reach out.
Mm.
And I made my way in our introductory conversations. I'd made my way to my office, and when I sat down is when the conversation turned to disaster relief, and I started taking notes. I could think if I remember right, I said, "Mary, can you hold on a second?" Because I sensed this turn, grabbed a pad of paper, and started taking notes because I realized very quickly that I was talking to somebody who knew what they were talking about, and
Aw.
somebody I needed to listen to, and somebody I needed to take notes on what was being said.
Mm.
And what you told me is one of the things you told me was that Inspiritus was up in the Tampa area trying to find a place to come and to set up a base to serve the community here in the Fort Myers area. I think all the hours preceding the hurricane's landfall, everybody was expecting it to hit the Tampa area, and Inspiritus was already prepared, ready to meet the needs there. And when it turned to the east and made its landfall here in Fort Myers, um, you put us in contact with Inspiritus. They came this way. We handed them a key and
Mm.
said, "Tell us what we can do."
Mm.
And so those relationships were begun right there.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, and I just can say, Pastor, it was a blessing to be able to work with you and be able to make that connection. I look back upon that and I just see how, in so many ways, God just prepared us for a time like this to be able to draw alongside of you.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Sherry, I'm just wondering, from your years of experience leading teams of trained volunteers, how do you go about planning and preparing your volunteers for a crisis like this?
You're just constantly training, and we do mostly on the ground in the moment type training. So that opens it up so that anyone that has the heart and the hands that want to help are able to do that. You don't have to go through hours of free training with us to be qualified to come in. You come in and then we will put you to work and show you how to do it and make it happen. And just to kind of tag back a minute on what Steve just said, I can still see the faces of Steve and some of his members of the church as we pulled in. I think that we'll probably talk about it here in a few minutes. But one thing that I will never forget, when you say disaster relief to people, a lot of times they're thinking handing out water, preparing some meals, and giving out. And that's all important. We've got to keep everyone hydrated and we've got to keep them fed. But there's so much more to it than that. And I believe seeing our teams roll in a caravan coming into their church, I'm sure at that moment they were thinking, what did we say yes to?
Mm.
And wondering what they'd gotten themselves into. And so we'll move on from there and talk about it later. But that when you talk about preparing volunteers, it's the unexpected and it's to be prepared and be flexible and move on a dime. And that's what we have to do when a disaster hits.
Sherry, I'm
And
not
it's
sure what we thought about at the time. I don't, but what we remember thinking was white horses and shining armor. That's what that's what we remember.
Well, I'm thinking Pastor Rhodes, has been such a blessing to you also, Sherry. And I'm just wondering if you could kind of share with us what you felt like you were able to provide him, as the senior pastor, as a leader within his community, when they so had a desperate need to survive themselves. I
Yes.
mean, many of those people were directly affected, and yet they were needed also to be part of the response effort. So, what do you feel like you uniquely have been able to provide Pastor Rhodes to help him survive and his congregation survive and recover themselves in their community as they're sharing Christ?
Well, I hope if you were to ask Steve that, he would say just the love and the heart that we've brought to the community. Uh, you know, to open his eyes and the congregation's eyes. I believe that since the beginning, they've always been open hearted and open minded, but we were able to open their eyes and hearts and minds, I think, even more, and show them some other ways that in the future, even that they can help their community when any type of a trauma or incident happens. It doesn't have to be another Hurricane Ian, but yes, situational awareness of what could have happened and had they been prepared ahead of time and what can happen in the future. So now from the lessons that they've learned and what they know now and the resources they've gathered.
Mhm. You know, we never know when a crisis like this may happen, right? It could be a man-made crisis or a natural one like this was. But if you'd like to hear more about how Sherry may assist you to prepare and be able to respond immediately, just like she did there with Pastor Rhodes, you can go to the christianemergencynetwork.org and schedule an appointment with her.
Thank you, Mary.
So Pastor Rhodes, I just like you to kind of depict for us again. We're talking with Pastor Rhodes, the senior pastor of the Fort Myers Church of the Nazarene, and I'd like to know, what was it like working with Sherry and her team on site at your church, and maybe you can kind of give us some examples of how she was so valuable to your leadership, and then what changes actually took place as a direct result of working with her.
Yeah, we had kind of had a 3-point mission at the beginning, not really knowing what we were doing. And so that 3-point mission was keep doing what we know how to do. And that was to be a church. That was point number one, that we would continue to be the hands and feet of Jesus. And quite honestly, this is the time that we get to be the hands and feet of Jesus in a moment like this. So that was the first thing. The second thing was to learn, to have open hearts and minds, to learn about disaster relief, to come alongside the disaster relief workers, not at all pretending that we know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So to keep our mouth shut and our minds open, to learn from people like Sherry and Inspiritus and the Christian Emergency Network. The third thing that we decided that we want to do is to maintain a relationship with the people in our community that were being served by Inspiritus. And I was meeting with one of the disaster relief teams that had come in to work alongside of Inspiritus last night, and referred them to that passage in Luke chapter 10 about the Good Samaritan, where the Good Samaritan, dropped off the injured person at the hotel there and said, "When I return,
Right.
I'll repay you." And that's the part that we haven't gotten to do yet, but that's the commitment that we have made to all of our disaster relief teams, that the work that they've done here is not just mucking homes. This is changing lives, and that they are partnering with us in a continued response, not just in disaster, but after recovery, that we would continue to respond to the people that they have served. And that's where we would come alongside. The amazing thing that I witnessed when Sherry showed up here was the fact that I think that Sherry realized that, and maybe this always happens, but she realized that she needed partners. And they came in with a team, but yet I watched this team develop. There's a little motto or a little saying that I've learned, that we want to work with people who are enough alike us to maintain the integrity of the mission that we serve, but different enough from us to be necessary to the mission. And what is so wonderful about the team that Sherry created was she brought the muscle to and the organization to the site here to serve Fort Myers. And then the partnerships begin to evolve. Rex Rothrock with the Rothrock Foundation that showed up to feed all the volunteers. And he hasn't left yet. I mean, he's still here after all these months. and serving. And what a wonderful foundation that is. And then Tunnel to Towers shows up with all these firemen from New York City. And here they come, and they dropped off a lot of money to help fund the mission here of serving in disaster relief. We had the Home Depot Foundation and the Toolbox Foundation that brought the tools and the necessary equipment. The Airbnb that said, hey, if you find people who need a place to stay, we'll send you vouchers to do that. I mean, it just continued. Mission on Wheels. Oh my goodness, how could I almost leave those guys out? They have said not only will we come in with a shower trailer, which was much needed at the time, but now we have 2 bunkhouses that sleep 16 people each. They helped us with the hookups. They are here maintaining those all the time. They're out of Houston, Texas. And so they're back and forth all the time, just coming and meeting the need as it arises. And then yesterday, I went with Mike Costello, who is the founder of Mission on Wheels, and they are hoping to leave behind 11 trailers at our campground that's in the center of the state. 5 shower trailers, 5 bunkhouses, and another trailer that is a washer and dryer unit, and just leave them here to serve Florida for the next time that this arises. And so what Sherry brought and what you started, Mary, through the Christian Emergency Network was a group, was a team of people that had specialized services that together worked, I'm just going to use the word flawlessly, to serve our community. And what a sight it was to see, as someone who had no experience in this, just to watch this unfold, to see the leadership that was present in the midst of all of this. And it was a sight to behold. And it continues to be a sight to behold.
Well, Pastor, I just have to share that Sherry and I have known each other for the better part of 20 years, and it all begins with relationship, doesn't it?
Yes.
You know, trusted relationship. And just think about all of what you've just said about the tremendous capacity that was increased because of those relationships. I mean, they're absolutely key, aren't they, Sherry? And we've seen that.
Definitely.
We've seen that over the years. And for people like you, Pastor Rhodes, to be able to connect with someone like Sherry, to be able to increase your capacity, even though you didn't know what to do, is such a vital necessity for anyone who was leading the flock. And I'm just wondering, Sherry, what were some of the key decisions that you had to make in this situation that were born out of your experience while responding to this crisis?
Well, I think the first key decision was to determine exactly where we were going to go, because it was so widespread and so many people impacted. But again, I went back to the importance of that partnership and knew we can't go anywhere and we can't serve any place if we don't have someone willing to open their doors to allow us to stay there to work out of and set up our base and our volunteer housing and everything. So calling CEN and talking to you and saying, can you reach out to your network of churches, was the first big decision, I think, in it. And that helped dictate some place, because we knew we had a place we could work, that we could have gone anywhere and the need was there, but we couldn't go just anywhere and find a place that would have done what Pastor Steve has done and opened his doors to us and helped support us. So it is not only just teamwork on our side, it has taken a tremendous amount of teamwork with Anthem Church as well, and the members there. It's not just the pastor, you know, all of the members there have been welcoming, have done what they could to help, and have given us support. So the first decision was just that. Where are we going to go? Who am I going to contact to find someplace willing to host us? And I think then the next decision was just sitting down with Pastor Steve and us figuring out, what is this partnership going to look like? You know, and one of the things that he had said, and he just pointed out, was that they wanted to learn And of course, building capacity is what it's all about. And so helping them to build their capacity to help their community the next time, because the next time we may or we may not be there.
Mhm.
And so, he identified members in the church that went side by side with us to watch how we did things and learn how we did things. And so helping them to build their capacity, that decision that we made when we sat down and talked together about what this partnership was going to look like, I think is one that really stands out in my mind to me as one of the best decisions that could have been made all the
Mm.
way around.
Well, you mentioned that kind of experience that comes out of your years that you've had responding in the field like that. How do you think that other leaders like Pastor Rhodes, in that same situation, how do you think they can benefit from your unique role and experience, Sherry?
I think like I said at the beginning, is where Anthem Church was the situational awareness, understanding what the situation is, understanding how they can fit in and what they can do. It may not the next time with another church look exactly the same. It may the next time with another disaster, even for Anthem Church, look exactly the same. But to know what there is, what are those needs out there in the community that your church, no matter how big or small it is, can help fulfill in some way.
And it's also, isn't it also, Sherry, learning what they should not do too, so that they are not,
Yeah.
they're not getting all wrapped up in something that they don't have the capacity to do. And it's knowing the difference between the two, don't you think?
Oh, most definitely.
And
Yes,
I
most definitely.
and I just wonder, for those Christian leaders that are listening right now, what can they expect in the future if they contact you and consult with you, Sherry? What can they expect to have to glean from consulting with you?
Yeah, certainly. I think one of the first things is to walk through and learn and understand what their capabilities may or may not be. And that is a very important part because everyone doesn't have, and it's not supposed to have, the same skills or the same capabilities. So, learning what it is you can do and then walking step by step on how make that happen and how to prepare, how to set up your ICS and how to get your structure in place so that you're not caught off guard and when it happens, it just naturally rolls out,
Mm,
as well as providing resources. What are
mhm,
some of the resources out there for you that you can grab onto now and start networking with and building those relationships? Because the hardest time to build those relationships a lot often is during the time of
yeah.
need.
Mhm,
So, yeah.
mhm. And so, Pastor Rhodes, as you were working with Sherry, did it occur to you that maybe you were not aware of someone like Sherry before we talked? In other words, were you aware before the crisis happened beforehand that someone like Sherry could come and walk alongside of you and co-labor with you like this?
I was speaking last night at an event regarding disaster relief, and they asked me to bring a devotional and they gave me 45 minutes. And as a pastor, hey, I love that. That was wonderful. And so I was able to sit and talk with them about that. And one of the comments I made to them, I said, "Hey guys, when this happened, and my missions director at our church said contact Mary Marr." I was like, "Okay," and I had no idea that people like you guys existed in the world. I
Mhm,
had no idea.
mhm,
And I guess I'd lived in my little bubble of churchdom
mhm,
and never really had, I don't know, we had winter storms up in Indiana, but that was about it. And we knew how to get through that. And that was simply wait for the snowplows to come.
mhm,
But as far as disaster relief workers that would come in and muck homes and sleep, come from all around the country, sleep on cots, and you know, it's it was just amazing. We have chiropractors here that left their practice to come and serve.
Mm.
We have, I failed to mention that the Church of Jesus Christ, that multiple denominations that have, left their homes just to serve us,
Aw.
and it was just quite amazing. It was
Mm.
just a blessing to watch that and see that. Catholic churches and even some denominations that I can't even pronounce. I don't even know what they're called. Presbyterians and Lutherans and Baptists and Pentecostals. I mean, they've all been here and through here.
Mm.
And to see wealthy, retired people who could be on a cruise ship enjoying the Bahamas or wherever they might be, who said, no, I'm going to go put on boots
Mm.
and
Mm.
work and
Mm.
serve people who are hurting right now.
Mm.
And understand also that, we're just coming out of COVID here, and we were just starting to get our feet back under us, and then this hurricane came
Mm.
and knocked us over again. And somebody came to me and they made this comment. They said, Pastor, I think we could do great things at our church if we didn't keep getting interrupted. And I said to them, I said, maybe these interruptions aren't in the way.
Mhm.
Maybe they are the way.
Yes.
Maybe this is the way for us.
Mm.
And I think now these people who made those comments would come back and say, indeed, they are the way. Through this, we have met wonderful disaster relief workers like Sherry and Spiritus and Christian Emergency Network and all the others.
Mhm.
We've met them. We know they exist. And now we get to join with them in solidarity for the rest of our lives. We get to do this in some capacity for the rest of our time here. And we are better for it,
Mm.
not worse, that we have gone for going through this.
Well, and
And
Pastor,
Mary,
I just wanted to say, Pastor Rhodes, that what you've said is so really key, is that just like I mentioned, there's the fact that 90% of people in crisis will ask, where is God in this? We have a tendency as Christians to want to avoid, or as humans, to want to avoid crises and troubles and struggles, right? And yet, these are actually the very opportunities that God provides us when people are so open to having the gospel shared with them in both word and deed. And we find that if you don't walk alongside of people, even if you're quiet, you're praying quietly, and that ministry of presence, like the Salvation Army talks about, that if you do not do that, you miss a key opportunity of sharing the gospel. I'm so grateful that your church has recognized this. And Sherry, I wanted to, you wanted to say something before I ask Pastor Rhodes the last question here.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think one very important part of what we need to keep in mind and keep in the forefront as we're looking, any church is looking to be able to do this. When people ask me all the time, how have I done this for 20 years when all I see is destruction and hurt? Well, they're wrong, because what they're missing is I don't see just the destruction and hurt. I see the beauty, and I see the best come out in people. And, for the Anthem Church, when they opened their doors, their Nazarene church. However, we all know that once we go to heaven, it's not going to matter if we were Nazarene or what denomination we were. And so we're almost seeing a little piece of heaven work right here on earth in the Anthem Church, because as he said, it has been every denomination you can think of that has come in and joined up with us and slept on the same floors with us and ate and just walked beside all of us there at the Anthem Nazarene Church. It makes no difference. And so I want, as people's thinking, do they want to ever do this? Is it too much of a burden on the church that they need to remember the beauty of what they're going to witness as well?
Well, and Pastor, just to segue on that comment from Sherry, that from her heart, is, what would you like to tell other Christian leaders about your experience, so that they can really benefit from and really take these steps as well?
Well, we're in a time of revival here in our country with what's happening in Wilmore, Kentucky, right down the road from where Sherry lives and where she is at this point in time, getting a little bit of a break and recovering from COVID. But right up the road from her is Wilmore, Kentucky.
Mhm.
And there's where Asbury University is, and we are all aware of the revival that has broken out there, and it's hopefully spreading certainly among our youth and around the country. But I think what I would say to kind of pick up to something you said earlier, Mary, where is God in all of this? Where is God? Well, I think sometimes we as Christians and as those who serve in whatever capacity, but in this case, disaster relief, we say, well, God is here and God is coming through us to minister to you. And that is true. There's a lot of truth to that we are the hands and the feet of Jesus going into places to serve. But what we've discovered in the process of doing this is that as we've looked into the eyes of these people that we've been able to serve, we've seen Jesus in them. And so that where is God works both ways. Sometimes we Christians sit in our churches and we keep waiting for revival to happen, praying for revival to happen, when really God's out there in our neighbors. That's where he is. And he's saying, hey, come over here. I'm over here. I'm not in your church, and I'm not necessarily in your prayer meetings. I'm not against prayer, certainly. But get outside the walls.
Yes.
Because I'm over here. I am in the person that is homeless. I'm in the person who's in a moldy house because of it's wet in here. I'm here. And I think as we go and as we serve, we find Jesus on the ash heap. And it's there that we can then serve the Lord. May I share a story?
Yes. Oh, please.
It was just a couple of days after Inspiritus had been here. I received a call, and I happened to be here I hardly left the office for like 2 weeks after the hurricane. We put in 105 hours the first week of the hurricane. It was crazy. But I received a phone call. It was on a Saturday morning early, and it was a guy that I barely recognized his name. He had been to church here a couple of times, and he told me his name. I won't mention it for lack. Sherry, you can do that if you feel free to do it, but I'm not going to. So I don't feel it's my place to say his name. But he said, I need some money, and I just need some help. And I said, well, how much do you need? This is on the phone. And he said $600 would be helpful. And so we'd had a buddy of mine from Michigan that when the hurricane hit, he wired money into my account, several thousands of dollars. And he said, just give it away to people, do whatever you need to do. That's just there to help. And it's totally at your discretion. So I grabbed $600 and made my way to Holiday Park. It was like a mobile home, modular home type of subdivision near the beach. And I drove down there through all the tangled metal and made my way back to where this guy said his house was. And he was standing out in front of it. And I'm talking to him, and he told me that he had some relatives in my church, and I knew them. And bells were going off in my head, as they often do, but to remind me how I knew this guy. And so I'm sitting there and I listening to him. I said, where are you living? Where are you staying? He said, right over there. And I said, wow, that house is destroyed. He said, yeah, but I can stay in there. There's a room there. I said, brother, do you have a job? No. I could tell he was really down. And I'd found out that he had lost his wife about 3 years ago, and he had just given up. He had just given up on life, was really downhearted, and then this hurricane happened. And I said to him, I said, brother, why don't you get in my car and come to the church with me? And there we have a place where you can sleep. We have 3 square meals a day, and we have a purpose for you to live your life. And
Mm,
that purpose was with Inspiritus
mm,
and mucking homes.
mm,
And he initially said no, but he called me up the next day right after church and said, "Can you come pick me up?"
mm,
So I had one of the men of our church that went and picked him up, brought him to the church. He went to work for Inspiritus the next day, 3 square meals, place to live, and he had community.
mm,
And
mm.
this guy, a couple of weeks ago, was awarded the president's, Sherry, what was that called? The president's?
It's the President's Volunteer Service Award, Lifetime Service Award, and it was the Gold Star Award.
Oh, that's
And
wonderful.
now he has acquired a job teaching disaster relief here at one of our local um, colleges, I guess the word would be. And it's amazing what God does
That's
um, in the midst of crises. And he just, when we just say yes to go and serve him, lives are changed. Lives are changed.
Mm. Well, again, we never know, Pastor Rhodes and Sherry, where a crisis like this may happen.
Mhm.
But for those who are listening, and if you'd like to learn more how Sherry may assist you to prepare for or respond immediately to a crisis like this, you can go to christianemergencynetwork.org and schedule an appointment with her. And Pastor Rhodes, we're talking to Pastor Steve Rhodes, the senior pastor at the Fort Myers Church of the Nazarene. I'm just wondering, now that you know a little bit more about CEN and you know a little bit more about the Ready Church and some of the training modules, because you've been living those out, how do you think it would have helped you to have already had a Ready Church crisis team in place prior to Hurricane Ian?
Wow, it would have helped us immensely, of course. And the relationship that we have established and the relationship that will continue to grow uh, during peacetime will make us ready for the next war, the next time that we have to go to battle against crises like this. And yes, we will be more prepared. I am so grateful for Christian Emergency Network and how you all just connected the dots for
Mm,
us
mm,
on the fly immediately in a 30-minute phone conversation. All
mm,
of this transpired just
mm,
just just like that. And I
mm.
remember getting off the phone, called my wife. I said, I spoke to one of the most amazing women that I think I've ever spoken to in my life, and
Oh,
or people for that matter that I've ever spoken to in my life.
mm,
And I think we're on track for something special here. And
mm.
indeed, that has been the case. And thank you so much, Mary, for that.
Oh, it's my joy, Pastor. And I'm thinking of one story that you kind of related to me. If you can do this with, in an honoring way, I just think that you learned an awful lot about having those agreements with other churches who are in your close proximity, and how if some of those agreements had already been in place, that you would
Mhm.
have understood more the capacities and the resources that you would have together in order to be able to strengthen the overall response. I'm wondering if you could just kind of, briefly kind of share a little bit about that.
Yes, absolutely. Um, we have created partnerships having gone through this that will help us in the future. And the day after the hurricane, we get a call from a church in Miami that said, "Hey, we have 30 men that are ready to come over there tomorrow to help." Well, actually, it was the evening after the hurricane. We'll come over tomorrow and we'll be ready to help out. And they brought 30 and started cleaning up tree trash in our community, went from house to house, making sure everybody was okay. And then the day after that, got a phone call from Church by the Sea. That was Renew Church in Miami that reached out to us. And then Church by the Sea in Florida Faith Church. It was like day 4. Our community had no electricity, no water, and it was getting kind of tough. And they said, "What do you need? What can we do?" And they were kind of a surfer church. Uh, Florida Faith Community met out of the Surfing Hall of Fame, which is in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, was where their church was. So I could hear in their voice, they were like, "Hey, Pastor, what can we do? We just want to come over and we want to like chill out with you guys and make sure you're okay." And so I said, "Hey, why don't you bring a party to our parking lot here at the church and let's grill out with our neighbors." And they're like, "All right, that'd be cool." And so they came in with a RVs and tons of food, and they grilled out and we put up tents, and we served about 100 people a day in our parking lot, breakfast, lunch, and supper, with music going. And it was a party put on by those two churches that came over, and we had a great time, and they are great relationships. And I will say this, through your network that you have set up, my sister, that was one of the most needed things that at that particular time, was to have brothers and sisters that would immediately join with us in our pain and in our suffering and bring joy in the midst of it.
Yeah.
And what you have through the Christian Emergency Network, and with churches that are on call, ready to just serve one another. Oh my goodness. God knew what we needed when he created the church. He knew what we needed. And so thank you for being such a wonderful coordinator of that here in times like this.
Oh, well, thank you for that blessing, Pastor. And that's just a segue to my question to Sherry now. And that is, and I think Pastor Rhodes, to all of us who are listening, have already answered that in our own hearts about what made him such a blessing to work with. But Sherry, if you want to put a few more words onto that, he's obviously a blessing to all of us.
Oh my, I can't even start to quantify what type of a blessing he has been to us. We have, over the course of my career, stayed at many churches, but I have to say that Pastor Steve has been one among the top of those that are most amazing. And I think the reason being is that he has been flexible, he has been open-minded, he has been open-hearted and willing to venture out of his comfort zone. Sometimes even, I know, this, we kept having more and more and more volunteers come in, and I would go to Pastor Steve and I'd say, basically, do we turn them away because they're ones that can help more in the community? Or can we find more space for them? And I'd hate to guess the number of laps that we have made around his church. They're just opening doors and looking in and saying, "Oh, I think we can get 4 in here. I think we can get 5 in here." And this one's stacked with chairs, or it's used as a Sunday school classroom right now, but we'll rearrange and we'll make room. You bring them in. And yes, I mean, just God, goodness gracious, just the thankfulness that I have in my heart for what Pastor Steve and his church and members, it's not just him. And that's something that I want to emphasize, is that, Sunday school teachers have said, okay, we'll figure something else out. And they've moved a whole Sunday school class out to make more room for us. And people that don't normally have to do, the person that helps do the cleaning around the church has just been tremendous. We clean after ourselves and assign chores at nighttime to clean, and she'd say, "You don't worry about this, you don't worry about that, we've worked hard enough, we'll take care of it for you." So when I'm saying all of this to Pastor Steve, it's not just him and the church. And I want to make that very clear. We recognize it has been the body of the church. It's all of them that has done this, and could not be more grateful and more appreciative of their willingness. And I can't say willingness enough, because it has stepped out of your comfort zone, become a little more open-minded, go out further with your outreach from what you've done. Something he didn't bring up is yes, we're there doing mucking and gutting and everything, but also with the partnerships that we've brought in too, along with the church, the kids couldn't even go out trick or treating because of all the debris in the neighborhood. And they set up a trunk or treat at their church. And a lot of our partners came in and joined up with them as well, and ended up having a large, large turnout from further out from just his community, and did the same thing for Christmas with a huge Christmas giveaway. And fire trucks came in and Santa Claus came in, and it was just, I don't know how many people ended up serving, but out of this, there has been so many more opportunities open up and so many more people come that didn't even know the name of Anthem Church or didn't know where it was before, I'm certain. And now they do. And it's all started with that one phone call to connect us to Pastor Steve.
Well, Pastor, just hearing that, I have to believe that with all of what Sherry just shared, that there were many that learned for the first time about our Lord Jesus Christ in a way that they had never, ever been moved before. And we always know that people don't want to know what we know until they know how much we care. And so when you actually live that and you walk that, it opens the hearts, the transformational point that people can receive Christ. And so I'm sure that in all of this, you have so many stories, many more stories that you could share with us about.
Can I share one more?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Share one more, please.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mary. I apologize for that.
Oh, no, this is good.
Well, just to pick up on what Sherry was saying just a moment ago, yesterday I received a call from the fire chief here in town, and he said, "Hey, Pastor, we have a problem here at the fire department that we think you can help meet this need. The fire department down the street from where your church is here on Daniels Parkway, they are needing to find a place to go for a week. And because the fire station is going to have to be shut down because they had some severe issues with foundational issues to the building. And they said, so we need to go somewhere to operate out of for a week. This is news to you, Sherry. This is what you get to come back to. How about that? That's something else we didn't say, that this is always full of surprises, isn't it? Yeah. Anyway, he said probably it's going to be sometime mid-May this will happen, but we're going to need to move our fire station somewhere. So would your church be able to house a fire department for about a week? And I said, absolutely, my brother, come on down. God has prepared us for this moment. And so they're going to be coming. And I just want to give some background to what God has done through our church. I came here about 3.5 years ago to Fort Myers. And this was a church that used to run several hundred, 400 in attendance back decades ago. And over the course of time, they had just decreased. And when I came here, they had about 70 people that were attending here, and they were elderly people. The average age, of course, we live in Southern Florida, but the average age was probably 75, was the average age of our people. And what they said to me, they said, Pastor, we haven't served our community in decades, and we don't know how we can do it with just us, and we don't know what to do. And then COVID hit, and we were just like, well, okay, we'll start making pharmacy runs for people who can't get out, and just things like that. We try to find ways, go to the grocery store, deliver groceries on doorsteps, and so we began to try to do stuff like that as well. And anyway, doing whatever we could do. And we started this initiative called Community First Initiative. And the old saying, don't let a good crisis go to waste. Well, we just took advantage of this time to do what Jesus would do. And Sherry's right. This, It's not just about Anthem Church, of course. It's about the Christ that we serve and the Christ that we represent, and pointing people to him. And this has allowed us to do that. As we have opened our doors and gone out to serve through Inspiritus and other organizations, people have seen Jesus. And coming out of, well, last Sunday, we had 220 something people here. And it was just amazing to see that. This is in the middle of devastation. And people are returning back to God. We are averaging, since the hurricane, we have averaged about 7 new members to our church every month since then. We have about 4 people giving their life to Christ in our services every week. And it is just amazing what God is doing. And we said one word that I think turned it all around for the kingdom of God here. And that word was yes. Yes. We'll open our doors. Yes, we'll serve our community. Yes, we'll do whatever it takes, God. And that's the word. Yes.
Well, I just want to thank you both for just giving us a clear pathway on how to prepare, respond together in a Christ-like manner, like you have done. You have just both just witnessed a tremendous move of the Lord in Fort Myers. And I know that we would hope and pray that many would call you, Sherry, to find out how they could also respond like this. And Pastor, how encouraging it is to see that your church is growing as a direct result of your obedience in these areas. And I know Pastor Rhodes would be willing to talk with you. If you've been listening to this, he would be willing to talk with you further. If you're a Christian leader responsible for your church or community group to respond to crisis, please contact CEN to hear more from Pastor Rhodes, or to learn more about how to assess and prepare for threats and risks, whether they're man-made or natural in your community, or to learn how Sherry may assist you to prepare or respond immediately if you have a crisis and you have not yet prepared. So please don't wait until it's too late. Go to christianemergencynetwork.org today. Okay, thank you.